Do run, run. Nah, I'm gonna do walk, walk. Next on the Atari ST Show.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Atari ST Show. This is a show about Atari's masterwork in the 16-bit computer, the Atari ST. Your good buddy, your good pal, Amigo Aaron, joined by the always entertaining the Brent.
It's me. Hello.
I see you got your Trucker Brent hat on
I
again.
do, because I lost my other one.
The green hat's gone?
I don't know where it's at currently.
Thank God, because that was no fun. Because if we ever chose to use a green screen, as opposed to doing this in a real field, like we are today, it would really hose up the screen, everybody.
It's remarkably cold outside.
You know, once in a great while, Brent.
Yes.
When we do the Atari ST Show, every once in a blue moon, you'll come across a little thing I like to call an arcade game conversion. Not too many of them.
Who knew that they even did these on the ST?
You know, because you've got Atari, they're kind of a big deal in the arcade.
They're okay.
And so you'd think there'd be a million of these, and there seem to be. And today's game is no exception.
And you know how much I love arcade conversions on old computers.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I like them. But so we're going to be looking at Mr. Do Run Run, straight from the arcades to your Atari ST. Now, before we get into Mr. Do Run Run, let's talk about Mr. Do in its entirety. Because that is a series that I think we both are down with the clown in, no pun intended. This is not the first Mr. Do.
No.
The first Mr. Do was Mr. Do,
yes.
Amazingly, which came out in '82. All these are from Universal, by the way, Universal Games, which we actually covered one of their games on ARG a while back, Mrs. Dynamite, which is a real fun unreleased game. If you haven't seen that,
which
you
I believe
should check
Bajako
it out.
gave me the flyer to. Thank you, Bajako.
That was
I'm gonna
awesome.
get that thing framed.
So, just before we get into the game proper, you've got the original Mr. Do, right? And then that came out in '82. So when you saw and I went, no, you obviously weren't in the arcades in '82.
No, not by myself.
How old were you before you first went to an arcade? Do you remember what year you would have stumbled into an arcade?
Oh, well, no. I mean, I went to the Twilight Zone by myself.
Right. I mean, you don't have to be by yourself, but how old were you when you went to an arcade the first time you remember it?
Oh, well, gosh.
What year was it?
85.
Okay, so well in by that time. So, but Mr. Do was probably still around when you went in arcades back in the day.
I do not recall playing Mr. Do at an arcade.
Do you remember seeing any Mr. Do's in the arcade? Any of the series?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, let's flash forward to when you did see Mr. Do, on emulation, no doubt.
No. I played him on different consoles and computers.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall where your original Mr. Do, or the first time you ever saw
It
him?
would have had to have been something on the Amiga.
Well, what about, did you play
or
it
possibly
how about
on the
Neo
Coco?
Geo Mr. Do? Did you play that one?
Absolutely not.
So,
I mean, yes, I've played it, but no, it wasn't among
the original Mr. Do was on a ton of systems, including the SNES,
yeah,
among others. So, I'm sure it's vivid in your memory. What did you think of Mr. Do when you first? I mean, because I know what I thought. I wondered if you had the same thought that I did when I first saw it.
When I first played Mr. Do?
Yeah.
I did, but I don't know. Oh my God, man, I would have been like 8.
Okay, let me rephrase the question yet again,
All
idiot.
right.
In fact, I'll start the answering.
All right, sounds good.
Permission to treat Brent as an idiot.
Hostile witness.
Yes. When I first saw Mr. Do in the arcade, I thought to myself, look at this thing. It's a Dig Dug knockoff. That was the first thing I thought. Because it's got the same perspective as Dig Dug. It's a vertical game. You go underground. Okay. There are little guys in chambers. It's very Dig Duggy looking. And I had that perspective for a long time until I really sat down, because Mr. Do wasn't my jam, as you would say. I never got into it that much.
I'd never say that.
But eventually I was like, I'm going to give this a whirl. I think the Chud may have spurred me forward to, and then I fell in love with it. Loved it after that. It's been a big favorite of mine. Did you ever have the same thoughts on it?
No, I'm sure my first thought when seeing Mr. Do is, why am I playing as a clown?
Really?
Yeah. Because
you live like that.
I mean, this doesn't represent my life at all.
Yeah. Except for the ball.
No, I mean, like, why is the clown digging around in the dirt and dropping apples on people's heads?
Really, no one knows.
Yeah.
There's been no formal explanation.
Yeah.
I'd hope that Mr. Laziness game would have gotten into that, frankly. It never happened.
But, I mean, as I grew older, the Mr. Do mascot is brilliant. Because you can stick him in any situation, have people go, why is there a clown here? And that's an instant grabber.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good marketing.
So shortly after
Vietnam.
I don't put him in that one. Shortly after Mr. Do, a year later, in fact, Universal decided to come out with another Mr. Do themed game, Mr. Do's Castle, which I also love. This is another one that me and the Chud got into, had a high score battle, and this is one I played quite a bit. Now, is this as good as the original Mr. Do? No, in my opinion, no. But it's fun, and it carries enough of the original Mr. Do stuff over to make it a similar feeling game, if not a completely different game.
Now, see, in my opinion, this is the worst in the series.
Really? Mr. Do's Castle?
Yep.
Why? I can't believe that.
Never liked the concept of dropping the blocks on people. Just not my thing.
Yeah.
I never got into it.
I think this is a real fun game, but it's sort of a thinking man's game.
Okay.
Yeah, if you know what I mean. So I can see why you weren't into it.
You got to aim for the quarter slide.
The next one released would be the one we're going to talk about today. But in the same year, they also released Mr. Do's Wild Ride.
Yes.
Mr. Do's Wild Ride is the most bizarre of the Mr. Do's.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it has the least to do with, like, the other Mr. Do's. What were your thoughts of the Mr. Do's Wild Ride, the roller coaster style game?
I liked it. I liked it because it was so out there. It is still third amongst my favorite Mr. Do games.
Yeah.
But it's so far above Mr. Do's Castle that it's hard to believe that they're even on the same list.
Well, I disagree with that. In fact, I think that's my least favorite is Mr. Do's Wild Ride. I don't like it at all. Now, rounding out the list, this was sort of released in the arcade, depending on how you look at it, which we mentioned it earlier. For all the way into 1996, it was a Neo Mr. Do and the Neo Geo. I don't like this one that much, if I'm honest.
It's for me, it's above Mr. Do's Castle, but just barely.
This is above Mr. Do's Castle too.
Yeah, Neo. Yeah.
Listen, don't listen to the Brent when it comes to Mr. Do's Castle. That's a big winner as far as I'm concerned. I'm surprised you don't like that one.
No, it never grabbed me. Now, for the record, the game we're looking at today, Mr. Do Run Run. I like this more than Mr. Do.
Whoa. Well, with that, we got to get into it. Let's go. Oh, man, here we are. So that was a provocative statement you made, the Brent.
I know.
But we'll come back to that. Let me just real briefly, before we get into the Atari ST port of Mr. Do, I want to give a little bit of a credit to the arcade version of Mr. Do. Again, this was released in 1984 in the arcade. Was 1 to 2 players alternating, which is the same as it is on the Atari. It was also known as Super Perrault. You know, that was the other name for this game. It's funny, Mr. Do, as we mentioned, got ported to many machines, and there were also plenty of clones of Mr. Do, I might add. But Do Run Run, the ports were much slimmer pickings at this point.
Yes.
It was
their popularity never touched Mr. Do.
No. The only ports that I could find listed were the one we're going to talk about for the Atari ST, an Amiga port, and an MSX port. Mm-hmm. That's the only ones I found. So, how to discuss this? And by the way, this list now. So this is something else I want to talk about. I tried to find out what came first, Mr. Do Run Run or Mr. Do's Wild Ride. Okay.
So they had to be developed at the same time.
According to the wiki, Mr. Do's Wild Ride was before Do Run Run. So according to this, Do Run Run was the last game. Now I've seen both sides of the coin here.
Sure.
So, and wiki is what it is. I've always been under the assumption that Mr. Do's Wild Ride was in fact the last game of the series.
I had always believed that as well.
But
to say that they were released so close together, they had to be in development at the same time.
I had trouble actually finding a month. So let me tell you what I can't find about Mr. Do Run before I tell you what I did find.
All right.
I don't know who made. I know Universal made it, but I don't know who programmed it.
No, this was in that wild time with Japanese programmers that they got no credit for nothing.
Yeah. I also don't know how it did in the arcade. I don't know how popular it was. I found sales figures for Mr. Do and Mr. Do's Castle, but I couldn't find anything for the last two games in the series. So I don't know how well it did. And I'm guessing for the lack of ports, maybe not great. I mean, Mr. Do's Wild Ride even has less ports than this has got. It's only got a port to the MSX. That's it.
Yeah.
So it was the only port it had that was an official home port. So I'm assuming, like I said, it's hard to tell which was which. This game is hard to describe. I mean, I could read you what the description is, but it's hard for me to exactly explain what it is. I've heard people say it's sort of a gotcha. Do you have can you put forth a valid explanation of what this game is?
I mean, at its heart,
Yeah.
it's a Pac-Man style game.
It sort of is if you play it that way.
Yeah.
So let's just try to describe the play field in this. And if you're watching at home, I have increased the size of the Ataris. I've taken away the sidebar on the Atari game just so you can see how it matches up graphically with the arcade. This is a game where you play Mr. Do. You've got your magic ball, and you walk around a multi-leveled play field. And when I mean multi-level, it's not isometric. It's just sort of, you could tell, it's sort of like I don't know, there's not a whole lot of games that have this kind of look to it. They're just raised areas of the play field. You can tell where they're at.
Yeah.
And around all the play area are dots, just like in Pac-Man. So you can finish a level by collecting all the dots. You can also, but you also have a line that comes out from behind Mr. Do. And when you make when you complete one section of the line touching another section, like a square, you will get all the dots in that area will become a fruit that you can go get for more points.
A higher value dot, basically.
Now, you don't have to get the fruit, but you can for more points. You're chased by monsters. These are sort of like your traditional style Mr. Do monsters. There's like a guy with antennas. There's a snake. The snake has eerie powers, I might add, which we'll get to. There's like a helmet-headed looking guy. And as you go around, you also have the ability to throw your ball and hit stuff and kill it.
Yes.
Scattered in different areas. And by the way, these maps, I believe the Atari ST version I saw it has 27 levels. All right, so there are 27 different play maps
that you'll never see.
That you'll never see. And as you go through, but sprinkled around each level are a couple traps. These are in the forms of a log. It's a straight out of like Return of the Jedi. It's like something the Ewoks would have set up. They've got logs that are set up that you can kind of run past. That is like a stick holding the log back. And when you go past it, that stick's removed, and the log will roll forward or it'll roll in the direction it's facing, because sometimes they're facing sideways. And it'll roll over anyone in its way, including you.
Yep.
So it'll absolutely kill you too. And I would say this is similar to the way the rocks work in other Mr.
The
Do.
apples, yeah.
Yeah, or the apples, just to say, yeah, they will smash Mr. Do as well as the bad guys. Another way you can get all the dots, you can kill all the bad guys. There's two different ways. The third way, which you're not going to see very often, but it did happen to me, so it does exist in the ST version, is getting the diamond.
Yes.
Which will move you to the next level as well. In the arcade, if you get the diamond, you get an extra man. I mean, you get a free game, I believe, in the arcade.
No. Well, it might be able to be set up in the dip switches, but it's a ton of points, and that's it.
It's funny. I looked in the dip switches. You can actually turn the diamonds off.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if you can do that on every game. I don't know. We never owned a Mr. Do, I don't think. So I don't know if you could do that on every game, but you could on this one. So to add to the Mr. Do-ness of the game, at the top of the screen, there's extra, which is a Mr. Do staple. And the little, occasionally, the little Letterman will come out, or when you do a loop, sometimes when you do a loop in the right spot, a letter man will appear. And if you whack him, kill him somehow, you'll get that letter and extra. And if you spell all extra, you get an extra man.
Well, that's close to what happens, yeah.
What do you mean?
Actually, when you do your loop, you can upgrade the fruit, and you can upgrade the fruit 5 or 6 times.
Right.
You can also reveal a diamond that way.
Yeah.
And you can reveal a letter. And when the letter is just on the ground, and then when you touch that letter, that will make that letter monster come out of the top of the screen.
You're right. You're right. It doesn't actually run around when you do it that way. But otherwise, and I will say, they will also occasionally come out at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
It has to be so often, and we'll get to that. So that's the basics of the arcade version. Did I miss anything you can think of off the top of your head?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. The arcade version.
Yes. When you throw your ball, you don't instantly get a new one.
No.
You have to collect X amount of dots that will basically recharge your ball.
Oh, so that's how you do it.
Yes.
I thought it just came back arbitrarily like in the old Mr. Do.
And I could be wrong on this. I need to run some further tests. I believe you will get the ball faster if you pick up a higher quality dot that's already been looped. I think it takes less fruits to pick up the higher the value the dot actually is.
It's funny when it comes to the ball, because can you say with 100% certainty that's how you get the ball back?
Yes.
I can't,
I mean, there might be a slow tick behind it.
Yeah.
Where eventually, if you just set in the corner or something, you'll get it back. But collecting dots will absolutely 100% recharge it faster.
I will say, unlike the original Mr. Do, where the dot would just reappear at random times, but usually a fairly short amount of time, in this game, it's not a short amount of time.
No,
unless you assumedly do what you said.
Earn it. Also, in the original Mr. Do, the amount of time it takes for your ball to come back is directly related to how many times you've killed an enemy with it.
Right.
So the first time you kill an enemy, it comes back in like 3 or 4 seconds, and then that time continues to double depending on how many people you've killed in that stage.
One last question before we move into the Atari ST version of this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever in your life see Mr. Do run in any arcade in real life?
No.
I believe, and Bo is in the chat. I think they had this when we went to Chicago, but I don't know for sure. I know I didn't play it, and I know if they had it, Bo would have found it. But I don't think I ever saw this in any arcades around here. I will say that. So let's talk about the Atari ST version of this now that we've sort of laid the groundwork there. Because, I mean, this is not an easy game to speak about. It's an unusual game. It's kind of complicated. Mr. Do for the ST came out in 1990 and was published by Electrocoin. Now, I'd never heard of Electrocoin except for this game, because this is one of Bo's favorite games. I had seen this in the past, so I knew about it. But the only other title they did on the ST was a game called Time Soldier, which I believe, isn't that also an arcade game, Time Soldier?
I don't know offhand.
I don't know if it's the same one or not. So this game was programmed by Martin Beisch. He did a decent amount of stuff on the ST, including Cave Mania. I like this one. Dennis Wheatley presents a murder mystery. Exelon, Foundation's Waste, Hellraiser, Hyperdome, the TMNT Coin Op, which I didn't know there was an ST version of that, and Viz. The graphics on this were done by Gary Felix, who worked on Exelon, Future Sport, Hellraiser, and Hyperdome. And the musician for this game was Wally Beeben. He worked on many of the games I just mentioned. He also worked on a game called Ball Game. That really narrows it down. Circus Games, Dark Side, Elite, Hammer Fist, Hawkeye, and something called Eyeball. Ball. So that sounds good to me. Again, this game will work on the ST, STE, and you need half a meg to get this thing cooking. Again, Electrocoin was responsible for all of it. It was the publisher and the people that actually were involved with the game. I got a chance to look at the back of the box for this, just because I thought you might enjoy the flavor text.
Sure.
Electrocoin, it says, brings the environment and excitement of the arcade to home micro with the universal conversion. Keep on running as our hero, Mr. Do, collects all the dots and fruits in this 3D adventure, battle against weird and wonderful monsters with his crystal ball, or squash them under the rolling logs. The game features a complete arcade environment, comprehensive animation and effects, and a wide range of different and compelling levels to complete. So, I mean, I'd say that's fairly. Do you agree with the comprehensive animation effects, and do you agree with the complete arcade environment portions of that flavor text?
Yes, every frame from the arcade is here, and yes, it looks pretty good.
Yeah. So, let's talk about what the Atari ST got right and what they got wrong. For starters, once this comes up with a very nice Mr. Do picture,
Yeah.
and then it comes up with a cool logo screen where there's explosions of dots on it. It looks pretty good.
It's something, yeah.
You've got
There's nothing wrong with it.
You've got no options.
No.
You've got 1 player or 2 player. I did try 2 player. It's 2 player hot seat with the same stick, at least for me. Now, maybe you have to have 2 joysticks to get 2 players. Doesn't really matter. I just thought I'd mention it. This game, the first thing I noticed about this game was this game features a picture of Mr. Do, sort of like almost like a side art on the screen to kind of give it that verticality on the screen, and the picture's quite nice. I mean, if it's going to be on the screen all the time, they might as well do a good job. I think it looks good.
It's pointless to be there.
Well, I think it looks okay.
It's fine. It's fine.
The second thing I noticed was the music was not the same as in the arcade. You had a whole different suite of music in this. Now, once you start the game, there is no countdown, there is no get ready, there is no anything. I mean, you are instantly in the action.
Yeah,
is no... I've never seen a game that gets you instantly in the action as quickly as this one does. You're instantly... I mean, it's just everything's going on. You better run.
Yeah.
Is the way it goes. So when this boots up, your first thoughts?
I was impressed. I thought that the visuals for this look... I mean, they're not arcade perfect, but nothing ever is going to be. Everything looked like they should, though. You could tell who Mr. Do was. The monsters all appeared like they should. The logs are probably the worst looking thing in the whole suite, but they still look like round objects, so that it's fine. In fact, it's better than fine. I thought it actually looked quite nice. The sprites and whatnot are basically the same size, maybe just a itty bitty bit smaller, but certainly manageable.
Yeah.
I thought the sound was off. When I say sound, I mean music, just because it was not arcade the music. However, it's still pleasant.
It sounds like something from the arcade.
Yes.
Not this arcade.
Just not this year, exactly.
It's got that sort of blaring. It's good. It's not bad at all, but it's got that sort of blaring, I don't know, audacious music that you would expect to come up during an arcade game.
Yeah.
It's just different than what
It definitely seemed like an attract sequence.
I will say, if you're familiar with the arcade music, you probably don't like this music. I would not be surprised if you...
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Again, though, I don't think this music was bad. It was just not...
It was different.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought about it all.
So, once you start your game, you are now in control of Mr. Do, just as we talked about. You've got multiple levels of screen. You've got bad guys that are relentlessly chasing you. My second thought on this is as you play it, the monsters in this they don't play quite exactly like the arcade in terms of their chase. These guys their chase is pretty relentless, but they're also kind of strange in a way. Like, if you're on a certain level of the screen, they may be 1 or 2 levels above you, and instead of coming straight at you, they may just slowly lower down and trap you at the bottom and stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess that's something, but I mean, it doesn't feel like the arcade. I thought one of the biggest differences was the attack of the bad guys in this. I could do better in the arcade than I could at this. Because I found these guys to be quite relentless.
Well, if we're going to get into it, let's get into it.
Okay.
Mr. Do Run, you move on a grid pattern.
Yes.
It's like a 20 by 15 grid. And the monsters will obey the grid as well.
Yep.
So if you are one down and one across, they have to go either down and across to get you or across and down to get you. This is actually my second biggest gripe in the entire game, is the AI is not motivated to come kill you. They will happily, if you are walking left or right, they will happily walk left or right with you, regardless of what you're doing or if it has any benefit to doing that. And what I'm saying by that is you can have a monster one level above you and literally just run back and forth, and he will never come and get you. He will never go down.
That wasn't my experience. They would come and get you, but the thing is, you can't just keep going back and forth. So I don't know if I ever tested that theory. You have to eventually try to go somewhere, and then they could get, because since they're parroting your movements, they could get you quick.
Well,
how about that?
In the arcade, they will, if you are on a different line and you are just moving left to right, they might move left to right for a little while, but eventually they are going to go down on the same level of you and actually follow the leader, chase after you. They're not setting up traps. They're not trying to mirror your every move. They want to follow the leader. That's how they attack.
In some ways, they remind me of like the ghosts in like Pac-Man.
No, they're nothing like the ghosts in Pac-Man.
not the speedy ones. Just the ones like sometimes you'll just get away with getting past one when he could have caught you for whatever reason. But I mean, it's not like this is an advantage. But I mean, sometimes you're like, well, that's weird. So their patterning was odd to me.
Yes.
I guess is the best way to put it.
And the reason why this is a big deal is when you go up and down slopes in the game, when you go down a slope, you get a slight speed advantage over the monsters, and when you go up a slope, you get a slight disadvantage. This is, in essence, the core gameplay of Do Run Run, is to know when you can go up and down a level, and it makes sense to get that little speed advantage, to get out ahead of someone, either to get a dot or to line up a log to fall down, and it's very nuanced.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Where in the Atari ST, you can run them up and down a hill until they're 3 spaces behind you. If you're not running up and down a hill, but they are when they go left and right, which is odd. It feels odd. The second problem with the AI is when the monsters from the extra letters come out in the arcade, it adds between 1 and 4 extra monsters that you have to deal with. In the arcade version, when these people come out, all of the other monsters start moving at half speed. They don't do this in the Atari version, which means all you've actually done is add 4 extra things you have to avoid to the gameplay field, and it's really hard. It's unnecessary. It makes you not want to try to get the bonus thing. And
I never went for it, ever.
And getting the bonus thing in the arcade, sometimes you get it just to slow down the bad guys.
Yeah.
Or, there's strategy behind it.
Yes.
Whereas this has eliminated that strategy. I don't want to give away my final thoughts on this too early, but I'm going to anyway. This looks like someone watched someone play Mr. Do Run Run and then programmed it for the ST. Because they got the graphics right. They didn't get the sound right, but they got comparable sound.
Yeah.
But they didn't get the nuance of playing Do Run Run. I think if I didn't know how the arcade played, and of course I played the arcade version, because it's an arcade port, you got to compare the two.
Yeah.
And comparing the two, this is so far lower than my expectations for how the port would go. I mean, they got so much right, but the feel isn't there. However, that said, I think if I saw this on the shelf in 85 to whatever, and picked this up, I would be thrilled because I wouldn't have had the intimate knowledge I have with the arcade version.
Yeah.
And I would have said, man, this is a lot of fun, not knowing how good the arcade version is in compared to this.
What if you picked it up in 1990 and you paid full price for it? Would you still be happy?
90?
That's right.
Oh my gosh, that's so late.
Yeah, so that does change things a little bit. Ponder that for a minute. I'm going to just talk about some of the things you said, and I agree with a lot of it, because like I play this game completely different than the arcade game.
Yeah, you have
in the
to.
arcade game, I go because this is, and I think this is why Boat and probably you like Twitch. It's like there are many different ways to score.
Yes.
And you could really run up your score in the arcade game, and that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
You're trying to make lots of loops, and it's fun. In this game, I tried to kill the bad guys as quickly as possible. I could never get off the screen any other way. It was always kill, kill, kill as fast as I could. And that's not the way you're supposed to play this game. It's supposed to be a point-pressing game.
Yes.
But it's so difficult that it's hard to play like that. When I first started playing it, I tried that. I couldn't get anywhere. Something else, the snake in this game, just like the arcade, when he gets behind you, he'll convert like a fireball and shoot at you,
yes.
right? This guy he's a menace.
He transforms faster on the ST. Yes.
Yeah, and he'll come at you fast. He's real tough to avoid, and keep in mind that he can do it from across the screen, so you might not even know he's coming, but he's coming, brother. And like I said, the way the attack formations and stuff, you don't get a lot of play in this, and you don't get to have they don't exploit the fun parts of the game. And I'll be the first to admit it. This game has just like all of Mr. Do's, there are nuances and point secrets in this that I don't even know. There's tons of stuff in it.
You want to know some of them?
No, I don't want to know them now because I can't use them on here is my point. But I mean, when you lose that aspect of the game, and you're right, like part of the fun is getting spelling extra. That's what I don't even think about trying to do that. I would avoid those guys like the plague. And something else this has always been a problem with me in this game. Mr. Do's castle in particular, there's a lot of structure around, so I can tell where things are going to go and try to guess and try to get to a different place to get to a safe spot.
Sure.
In these sort of abstract games where you can go pretty much anywhere, because with the exception of the fact that this has little elevations, it's effectively an area where you can literally go anywhere.
Yes, that is true.
Those games are always difficult for me. I always have problems with those games. And this game's no exception. It's so wide open. It reminded me of some of the later levels in Crapman. It's like there's too much freedom. Pac-Man should be in tunnels at all times. And so that made it difficult for me.
Well, and the AI had a lot to do with that. And I say AI very loosely. The patterns for the enemies have a lot to do with the difficulty of this. Because, like I said, it's normally a follow the leader type of situation. Where you can manipulate the bad guys, at least to some extent. And it doesn't have any of that nuance.
On the first couple levels, though, I could line the bad guys up pretty routinely to get killed by that log all at once. That was my move. I could get that most of the time in the first couple levels, then you're done. What did you think of the log rolling mechanics and whatnot?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
The pushing the log might have a slightly longer delay, but it wasn't too horrible. It's not like you ever do that in the arcade version anyway. But back to your question of what would I have thought if I'd have bought this in 1990?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what this released at price-wise?
I don't.
Okay. Let's say
$20 American dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that.
Which, that's insane. So, if I was to pick this up in 1990, there has to be a reason. There has to be I have played this game in the arcade or other Mr. Do titles.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would never even think to buy this in 1990.
Yeah.
Video games were so far beyond this at that point, it's ridiculous. Which means I'm probably trying to relive the arcade, which means I wouldn't be satisfied with this.
Yeah.
Man, that sucks so bad because I don't want to be down on this game. It's not horrible.
Yeah, graphically, it's great. They did a good job. I'll admit something we should mention. I think the hit detection not the best. It's super picky.
It's not great, but it's okay.
And it also, Mr. Do, I'm going to say he sort of putters along. It's
about the same pace.
I mean, to me, he seems sluggish, and the controls on this were a little sluggish to me. That's me. I thought they were a little muddy. That's me.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I don't think it was enough to be a strike.
If they got the rest of it right, it would have been as big a deal.
Correct.
But they didn't. So
Correct.
It is a big deal.
So, man, I don't want to sound like I'm down on this game because I'm down on all arcade ports. If
You
you're
hate
an
everything on Earth.
If you're an arcade port that just tries to recreate the game that you're porting, to me, you've already failed in a modern setting because I could just go play the arcade port.
Yeah.
That said, I think this is an okay game.
Yeah.
I think if you ignored the arcade and you just got this, but
it would be better.
But in 1990?
And I will say, just for the record, the MSX version of this came out in 88, and the Amiga version came out in 92. I have
92?
No, in 90 as well.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't played the Amiga version because I don't usually I try not to do that in case we ever get it comes up. But I would wonder how the MSX version because I think the MSX could have pulled this off, and it would be interesting to see how they did it over there.
They absolutely. You mean like hardware wise?
Yeah,
absolutely. This game doesn't ask for a ton.
But I mean, like I said, I don't think this is it's not. If I had played this in the arcade, if I'm you or Boat, and I'm a big expert, and then I come home and play it, I'm going to be disappointed.
Yes.
But it's a lot like a lot of arcade ports. Is it as good as the arcade? No. Is it fundamentally the same as the arcade? No. Is it in the ballpark? Yeah. And does it look good? Yeah. So that gets you a lot of points, in my opinion. Now, with all that said, the Brent, just a few tidbits about this that you might find interesting. I did find, thanks to Moby, they actually had a mention of this. This thing actually hit the UK ST charts in December of 1990, 26th place. Months on the chart, 1. So it was 1 month on the chart.
You know what that tells me? That tells me this was sold as a budget title.
Yeah.
And as a budget title.
Well, I doubt that. I doubt they probably didn't sell it as a budget title.
Oh, well. I think in a budget title at 1990, this would be okay.
I looked at believe it or not, I found some reviews on this before we get to the Discord stuff. Atari Mania, the guys over there scored it at 7.7 out of 10. Pretty high score. ASM gave, and unfortunately these are both in German, but ASM gave us a 48%, and Power Play dropped the hammer with 45%. So they were not fond of this particular offering. Now,
I would say this is a 5, 6. I think that's a fair range.
I think you could say this is a D, and I would go with D, and I'd be okay with it. That's what I mean. That's a 5 is an F. A 6 is a D.
Aaron, we're not. No,
that's the way we do it.
No,
so we did get one review, one brave soul. Jocko6502 chimed in. He writes, I thought I'd played this, but I hadn't. It turns out I was thinking of Dig Dug 2. That's an entirely different kettle of fish there.
Far worse.
I bet there's an ST version of that walking around.
I hope not.
That game was to continue with Jocko, Do Run Run. It's a bit of a departure from the first game. It's still a bit Mr. Do-ish. But the game mechanics have been overhauled, and it isn't the shameless license slap that later Mr. Do games seem to be. FYI, Electric Coin are still doing that, so I don't know if they're still around or not. Overall, it's fun and allows you to complete levels in a different way. Kill all the baddies, grab all the fruit, grab a magic gem. So there are good and different strategies for getting high scores. It has all the components of a good point press arcade game, but I really didn't get on with it as it's quite clunky. The sprite collision with enemies is a little too keen. I would agree with that. Visually, it isn't bad, but it plays like crud. Wow, don't mince words. So I checked out the arcade version. All the problems with the ST and Amiga ports are gone. So you have a much more fun game that you definitely feel in control of. The music on the 16-bit ports is not great either. It isn't the arcade music, and it feels more sinister, if that makes sense. It has a more of a sinister flair. As does the box art. Now, I will say I think the ST is a better version than the Amiga, as I think it looks better. When this was your only choice to play at home, it was okay. But in modern times, stick to the arcade. Mr. Do, more like Mr. Don't.
No.
6 out of 10. Burial from Chuck. Now, I mentioned that we know a guy who's sort of the King Dong of this game. And I have asked him to chime in here. So if you'll indulge me, Brent, we're going to hear from our good buddy, John Bodekar Schaller.
Oh, hello. You've just caught me in a peaceful night in the study. Do Run Run is my favorite arcade game of all time. It came out in 1984 which I believe was the final year of the golden era of arcade games. Do Run Run combines everything I love about a good arcade experience. It's a single screener. There's multiple paths to a high score. It's got a rockin' soundtrack. And of course, it's got that universal charm. Unfortunately, the Atari ST version of Do Run Run is missing most of these features. Let's start with the good, though. The game is drawn very well. If you're looking at screenshots of this game, you could come away thinking that this is it's going to be a good experience. Unfortunately, once you start playing, the experience is definitely not a good one. The game chugs along at a snail's pace. The collision detection is very, very suspect. And the excellent soundtrack is not even attempted to be emulated. It's been totally rewritten from scratch and not for the better. So, I have to give Do Run Run for the Atari ST an enthusiastic thumbs down, and this is not Atari ST bias. I give the Amiga version of the same title the exact same score because it is the exact same game. If you want to play Do Run Run, fire up MAME or head to your arcade. This is John Bodekar Schaller signing off for the Atari ST Show.
There you go, everybody. The words of wisdom from the boater. I knew this was one of Boat's favorite games. I had no idea it was one of yours, but when I think about it, the Brent, this is your sort of shindig.
Yeah.
Lots of point pressing, lots of fun.
Yeah. And some fun things about this, some extra ways of getting points. The more your ball bounces off the wall before it hits an enemy, you get a multiplier. The more enemies you crush at the same time with the log, multiplier. Up to a certain amount, and it does cap off. The fruits, every time they go, you loop them, it goes up in value. There's just a lot of ways to play the game, which I really appreciate.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and kill this game. It's not my favorite by any means, because it's just not my sort of, I don't like the play field in it personally, but I can understand how people can get into it because of the point action. Now, this I found interesting before we take this to the house. I looked this up on eBay. Now, when it comes to finding Atari ST stuff, it's often you don't find nothing.
Right.
This game, I found many of these for sale. And the prices were all over the map. I found, and these were the box versions I saw. You can get the discs, $10, no problem. But the box versions, I saw ranging from $26 all the way up to $161. So there were some people fishing, but I found I think 4 boxed copies of this for the ST for sale, which I found odd. So if you're interested in picking this up for whatever reason, I don't know why, maybe it's your bag, then by God, you will be covered because there are so many of these. And it's funny because there were a ton of the discs too. So it got me on that one. Who can tell? With all that said, I think we can close the book on Do Run Run. It's okay.
It's okay.
Let's get on to the end of the show here. Now, before we go, we've got...
Thank you for that smooth transition.
That's right. Well, it's funny. I was sitting there thinking, how do I usually get here? And I don't know. Sometimes I just blank out.
Apparently, you get here with a semi-truck.
All I can think about now is bowling and chess on a semi-truck, thanks to you. Let's see what we're playing next week, or the next time out, Brent. Screw this. Let's get into it. A game I have to say I've never heard of or played. It's The Night Shift.
We've both worked plenty of those.
Man, I know. Also a great film, by the way, if you haven't seen that. Now, we will be back on the Atari ST Show the next time around. It's going to be March 30th. March 30th at 6 p.m. It'll be a Sunday, March 30th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back in action on Retro Rotation with the Atari ST Show. However, we've got something to attend to next week, the Brent, which is a little ARG Presents action. We'll be back around in the rotation. And next time out, Brent, we're going to be doing some game show games.
Yes.
That should be a lot of fun. Game show games, you've got a whole universe of choices there.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to picking something up. And I know you told me you'd already picked something. So that'll be dandy. So Brent's already, look at that. It's unlike you, because usually you wait till way past the last conceivable minute. to pick your game. Listen, everybody, in case you're interested, we have announced that Boat Fest is coming in July. If you're interested in Boat Fest, check the notes at the bottom of this video. I will order audio. I'll have the pertinent information for you, and the websites are going to get tickets. This year's going to be a big one. We got tons of time. This year, since it's not until July, so I've got lots of time to plan. But are you just quick before we get too far gone? Are you excited about the Boat Fest coming up?
I am cautiously optimistic that I will be able to attend all 3 days.
Look at that Nightbot. It's like it read my mind. It just
I think Super
up.
Tech Boy did
Thank you, Super Tech Boy. So I'll read the particulars for you on the radio. Now, it's Boat Fest, a.k.a. the International Retro Computer Expo, which pretty fancy name, international, eh? This thing's going down July 11th through 13th here in scenic Hurricane, West Virginia. For ticket info, check out ircexpo.net.
There you go.
That sounds good to me. That should be a lot of fun. So please, we hope you join us next week for Game Show Games and ARG Presents. And until then, make sure you play
your ST today.
Close enough.